You're listening to Walk in the Wild, the podcast that takes you on a journey through the fascinating world of wild edibles, foraging, and herbalism. I'm your host, Blake Stanworth, and I'd love for you to join me as we learn about foraging wild foods, discovering edible plants right in your backyard, and delving into the ancient art of herbalism, where we'll unlock the secrets of medicinal plants and their extraordinary healing properties. Walk in the Wild isn't just a podcast, it's a call to reconnect with the natural world. We'll unearth the knowledge of our ancestors and gain insights into century-old traditions that have sustained us throughout history. Come with me as we let nature be our teacher. In this episode, aspiring herbalist Stormy asked me 5 questions that will help you get to know me better, learn some foraging basics, which plants to begin your journey with, what I hope to achieve through this podcast and my YouTube channel. If you're interested in learning more and want to support what we do here, please join us on all the major social media platforms, and I hope you enjoy this exciting episode of Walk in the Wild. I'm here with Stormy, aka Herb Bay, my girlfriend, and she's going to ask some questions so you guys can get to know me. I know I usually script my videos and make them really meticulously edited. We wanted to do more of a laid-back, kind of conversational style podcast, just so you guys can get to know us. So she's going to ask some questions, and let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. I'm super excited to get to do this and let people kind of get to know you better and understand like your passion behind the channel and what your vision is. So let's ask away. Okay. So how did you first get into wild edibles, foraging, and herbalism?
My grandpa was a gardener, and I've had a lot of gardeners and plant enthusiasts in my family. My grandpa showed me that the dandelions in the yard were edible, and that just blew my mind. Couldn't believe that the weeds that everybody was trying to pull and kill could be edible. So I remember him showing me that dandelions were edible, and that just made something click that, oh my God, look at that massive mullein. Yeah, 6-foot tall mullein.
Hold on. Continue.
Yeah. We'll probably spot some wild edibles while we're out here walking around. That's why we thought it was a good idea to come out here and actually walk in the wild. She's taking a picture of it right now. It's flowering too, so we got to come back and get some of those flower tops.
Sweet, that was awesome.
So, and there was a lot of gardeners in my family. My mom, my dad, my uncles, and my grandparents had gardens. I mean, no one was really per se into wild edibles, but they were always huge gardeners. So I had a garden at my mom's house, and she grew kind of like a salsa garden. She had tomatoes and peppers and little tomatillos, and I remember we had a strawberry garden on the side of the house. So every year I'd see these little plants grow, and I knew they were useful. I thought that was amazing. So I think I've always kind of had an affinity for plants, and they really inspired me. And once I started getting old enough to go out in the woods and I was watching all these gardens as a child, I saw the wilderness as an extension of the garden, but more of an infinite resource. So once I realized that all the plants that could be identified were out in the woods behind the house, I just got infatuated with trying to learn them. And as I got a little older, I bought an old Peterson guide. You know those little green books that you always see, the wild edible books?
Uh-huh.
It's like the one you always see, like the old school 20-year-old Peterson guide. You know, towards the middle of the book, there was a couple color pictures, but the rest were crude drawings. I got one of those, and it was so hard to identify stuff out of it, but I just knew there was a possibility that a lot of these plants were edible. So I studied that Peterson guide, and I finally learned some other plants like plantain, yarrow, chickweed, henbit, and cattails, and wild blackberries, and just became hooked on foraging because I just knew if I could understand all these plants in this book, a whole universe would open up about, all these things that are edible. And in my teenage years, I learned a lot of wild edibles, and I started getting really into bushcrafting and camping and survivalism. And I realized that foraging was a huge, crucial part of survivalism and coexisting with nature comfortably. I was like, this is a skill I have to learn. This is in the top 3. You got to know how to make shelter, make fire, get water, and collect your food. So it just became such a priority for me in my mind, being a survivalist, to learn all these plants.
Something I think is really interesting from like just dating you, and I didn't ever really notice that all of these things were outside, had purposes and uses until you would start quizzing me and saying, hey, what's this one?
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I'm pretty comfortable with spotting everything now.
Yeah, and you're really good at it. You've learned so quick. We'll be walking around, and the first couple plants I taught her would be like plantain and chickweed and henbit and stuff that's in our yard. And I'd be like, that's edible. Check that out. And she'd study it a little bit. And then I'd ask her again 2 days later, and she's already remembered it. So I think you're naturally really good at it. And that's why you're developing a passion right alongside me. And I love that about you.
It's been really fun to get to learn and understand, like when you quiz me and stuff, because you're a really good teacher. So why do you want to help people learn foraging and herbalism?
I think that it's such an important long lost skill to have in your arsenal as a human. And we as a species knew this type of knowledge for millennia, but we've lost it in this modern technologically dependent era. Everybody used to know this skill and it was so important, and it's a tragedy that we've lost it.
Yeah.
And I just think that if anything ever happens, like being a prepper / survivalist, this is kind of how the channel started out, as more of a preppy jail.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, everybody needs to learn these skills because shit could hit the fan.
Right.
And it was more of a prepping mindset. So I always thought we as a society need to relearn all these skills, especially identifying wild food, because it's crucial. It's how we evolved as humans on this planet. Everybody used to know that skill. Even children used to know that. And that was part of their job, was to go out and, collect water, gather firewood, and come home with little wild edibles they found. So I just feel like we've lost it so bad, and we need to learn it back. So if I can help some people relearn these skills, I'll be happy. And I think we're relying on a system that's horrible for our health and well-being. And we live in an instant gratification megastore society that sells us food tainted with herbicides and pesticides. Like Monsanto's glyphosate, that horrible chemical they spray on everything, keep the weeds from sprouting up, and from factory farm nutrient depleted soils. So I just think that all what science has done, all the great things that it's done for society, it's also harmed us in a way. All our food is just not healthy for us anymore. And going out and collecting your food from the woods is completely organic. It's really biodiverse. It's good for your body because it's not the same food over and over again. You're getting all these different plant chemicals and phytochemicals, polyphenols, antioxidants, just all these great molecules that heal your body that most people don't get. I think that you get way healthier when you start eating like this. Most people aren't even aware how bad the food they're eating is. It's scary. Most people are going to the store and they always say, try to shop on the outside of the aisles because that's where the good food is. And you're going on the inside and that's where all the boxed, super ultra processed food is.
Preservatives.
Yeah. Like we're always trying to get as much vegetables and stuff, and we've been gardening. But I just can't believe it. We'll look around Walmart and be like, dear God, what are these people doing to themselves? They don't realize how sick they really are.
I think that's a cool part about herbalism and foraging is you learn that everything you need is kind of right around you.
Yeah.
People would live off the land for years, and that there's plants with healing properties. There's plants with all kinds of medicinal uses and edible uses, and realize everything else in nature lives off of it. But we as a society have been told not to.
Yeah.
Just to go to a different source.
Make it think like it's all going to poison you. Like we should be terrified of nature and what's outside. And really all it comes down to is knowledge. Once you can identify these plants,
right,
so much opens up to you. I think we can keep going. The river's down here. We're just walking around the forest in the dark, guys. So we thought it would be quite cool with the ambient noises. We can hear the crickets and there's fireflies. And we've already seen armadillos and rabbits as we're walking around. So it's really cool. And naturally, I'm just scoping out wild edibles. And like, there's a mullen. There's a lamb's quarters.
I see a lot of lamb's quarters.
Yeah. I know. We need to come back to this area and eat some. We want to do a video where we cook some stuff for you guys. Stormy's an amazing cook. It's a bunch of lamb's quarters. And we were thinking of how to add some more varied content to the channel. So she had this idea of calling herself Herb Bay, like Salt Bay. The guy that you see, in the white t-shirt with the sunglasses and he's like sprinkling salt with his muscly arms. Plus she loves Queen Herbie, which is this kind of
artist.
Yeah, rap artist. It's amazing. So we're like, we're just going to call ourselves Herb Bay. That would be amazing. Guess we can turn around right here. It looks cool.
Yes.
We're looking at this stream in the dark with just our headlamps on. So cool.
Hopefully you can hear the crickets and all of that because it's a nice night.
We just got bugs flying in our face, ticks crawling all over us, but that's what it takes.
Since there's a lot of edibles around this right now too, but what are your tips for somebody who wants to just start foraging and stuff like that? Because you can't just go eating everything on the grass or, you've got to educate yourself.
Yeah.
What are some of your tips to get started and how do you get started? Because there's so much to learn and so much to know.
Yeah. It can seem really daunting at first. I remember that feeling like, how am I going to tell the difference between all these plants? They all look the same. And I think that finding the internet's your greatest resource. It's your best friend because you can see a visual representation of the plant right in front of you. Resources like books, pocket guides, identification apps are getting better. You can take a picture of a plant and the app will help you identify it, or at least get it down to a close family or the species of whatever plant it is. Facebook groups are amazing. Some of my really hard to identify plants, I would post them in Facebook groups that have like 200,000 people all over the world. And there's professional botanists in there and plant scientists and people that know way, way more about this than I do. YouTube videos is probably one of my favorite ways to do it right now, because if you just watch videos in the top 10, top 20 most common wild edibles, like our big video that took off, the one that's got 300,000 views. I think that spoke to a lot of the common folk because they just wanted to learn top 10 early spring wild edibles. 10 plants is a good chunk to bite off because that's digestible. You can learn 10 plants and you realize, oh my God, all these are in my yard.
Right. Most of them are probably there, no matter where you are.
Yeah. And they're all around the world. All those plants have traveled and naturalized all over the world. That's why I chose those specific plants, because I wanted it to be easy for just the regular person to watch that video and realize there's this whole bounty of wild edibles all over there.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Everywhere. I would say learn your first 5 wild edibles inside and out and just really study. Even if you know one, if you know dandelion, study that and learn every use of it, learn how to prepare it, sit there and taste it, cook with it, smell it, get tactile with it, and learn these plants inside and out. And that's a really good way to learn. Learn to identify, like go in depth with each plant you learn. Say you choose 5, like plantain, yarrow, chickweed, henbit, cattails, and learn to identify them at all times of the year as well, like all through the 4 seasons. In the wintertime, when you're walking around, you see these dried mullein stalks sticking up, and you say, oh my gosh, this must be where mulleins's at, because I can see the dried stalk. And if you come back next year, you'll realize there's a bunch growing there. You're looking around at the edges of a pond and you see the stalks of a dried cattail plant. You can see the fluffy dried pollen head on top of it, and just start taking these mental cues. You'll see oak leaves on the ground or acorns on the ground, and you're like, well, this must be an acorn tree. Or you see little pecans on the ground. There's just subtle signs that you'll learn through the seasons, because spring and summer, it's always really easy to identify everything. But once you get in other seasons, it gets a lot more difficult. Our top 10 early spring wild edibles video, if you're just starting out, that's a really good one to start out with, because it's going to teach you the basic ones and really get you interested and get you passionate about learning this. There's a wood sorrel.
The big one.
Yeah, that's got a really good lemony taste. We need to throw that in our salad when we make that video. Just be 100% we're talking about tips for beginners. Be 100% sure of your identification before you ingest a plant, and make sure you've identified it correctly, and then eat a small amount of it first to see how your body reacts to it.
Yeah.
And some guides, they even say, rub a little bit on your skin first just to see if it irritates your skin, if you're going to have a really bad allergic reaction to it. But to learn how a plant affects your body, just take a little bit of that plant by itself so you can deduce it down to it was that plant caused this. And don't just make a giant salad of wild edibles that you've identified. So I think those are really good tips for beginners. Start off with, your resources, books, articles, pocket guides, definitely the internet. Use the Facebook group. We've been using ChatGPT a lot.
Yeah.
That's such an awesome AI tool, because we can just tell it, ask it specific questions about plants and it'll just spit out information for you. And you can use it as a really good study aid.
I think one thing too is get a buddy.
Yeah.
That's helped me a lot with you. And try to learn them and identify them. And
Foraging's always funner with a friend, because you don't seem as crazy. Like, why are you out there eating weeds?
Right.
It's funny because she went to see her friend Mandy, and she's got a little daughter named Alexa, and she had some mint from our gardens. Because we always make tea, like green tea mixed with lemon and then some mint. She's like, why do you have grass in your drink? She's like, that's mint.
Right.
So we're going to have to teach her that it's all right.
Right. She had no clue.
Yeah.
I was eating grass.
It was so cute.
But I think it's always fun to do that, and it helps you learn, and it helps you kind of quiz back and forth. I remember the first couple wild edibles that I learned and thought were useful, besides dandelion, was yarrow was a big one that we saw a lot that I could call out really well, and probably mullein.
Yeah.
I spotted mullein everywhere.
Yeah. We're like, we can use that as toilet paper. We needed some of that on our Ozark Trail hike.
Yeah.
We went to Devil's Den and we were identifying all sorts of stuff. We were up there and we found some of the best wild blackberries we've ever had.
Yes.
And we were like dying, just so tired and thirsty and hungry. And we came upon this gigantic field of wild blackberries. And we were just sitting there pegging out.
Yeah,
We got some
that's the
pictures.
coolest thing.
We're gonna have to start sharing all those pictures that we got on our website. We're hoping to make a Facebook group eventually too, like a Walk in the Wild Facebook group that all you guys on our community can get on and share your pictures and plants that you need help identifying. But I think that would be really awesome to get our community more involved through some of the different social media platforms. Yeah, when I taught you about yarrow and how it helped stop bleeding
Yeah.
and all that stuff, it was like so amazing to you.
Juicers, and I could spot it. And then I eventually was able to spot chickweed and henbit.
Yeah.
And then I knew dandelion, but I didn't know it had so many uses, and I could make pesto out of it. You can,
Make a coffee
make a
substitute out of it. I know that one's probably got the most uses out of all of them. It's got like 7 different uses. You
Yeah.
can use the root, you can use the flowers to make wine, you can just do so much with it. And people like, oh, this pesky weed, get it out of my yard.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite ones that you that you think are the most useful?
I think some of the most useful plants, I like to break them down into a couple different categories. When I really started thinking about this question, I was like, really, we can break down plants into categories. And I thought there's edible macro food sources that you can eat a lot of, that really aren't going to have a problem because they're not too full of oxalates, and you can eat a lot of these plants. Micronutrient rich plants, and those are the plants like wood sorrel and, clover, curly dog, stuff that has a lot of oxalates. And all an oxalate is a chemical that binds to calcium, really.
Okay.
So if you take too much of it, it can bind to the calcium in your body, and it makes you calcium deficient. And when it binds to calcium, it creates kidney stone. So to mitigate that, you can heating it up, like cooking it really helps, or you can eat a calcium-rich food like dairy or cheese. And also they say apple cider vinegar and lemon juice helps hinder the formation of any kind of oxalates.
Okay.
So edible macro food sources, micronutrient-rich plants, medicinal plants, and those are the ones that you mostly use topically or in really small amounts because they're just too powerful to ingest like a food. And utility plants, which I think like bamboo, cattails, prickly pear cactus, you can do a lot of the thorns, but a plant whose morphology has a specific function, you can actually use the shape or the structure of the plant for something else besides just being edible.
Yeah.
So I'd say if I was to choose 6 of my favorite, most useful plants, I'd probably choose dandelion, plantain, chickweed, henbit, and purple dead nettle because you see them so often together and almost indistinguishable and have the same uses. Wild onions and yarrow.
I forgot about wild onions.
Yeah, I know. That was one of the first ones you learned too.
Yeah, I did spot those everywhere.
And then, you loved wild onions because we chopped those up and sauteed them up, put them on our eggs. We're like, oh my gosh, this is delicious.
It was salad with everything.
So I guess I'll go back into the edible macro food sources. So dandelion, chickweed, henbit, wild onions, cattails, wild blackberries, prickly pear cactus, oyster mushrooms. Plants like those you can eat a lot of. You could cook up a big batch of it and eat it, and you really wouldn't have to worry about oxalates. And a lot of the micronutrient plants that you shouldn't eat in large quantities, I would say, are like wood sorrel. It's really high in oxalates, but it's got a delicious flavor. It's good for a garnish because that lemony, kind of tangy, citrus-like flavor.
Okay.
Clover is really good to make a medicinal tea out of, but you don't want to drink too much of it. Amaranth, purslane, nettles, curly dock, lamb's quarters. They're high in oxalates, but you don't want to have a massive salad. You probably wouldn't want to go over like 2 cups of each of these plants at one time. And then you can reduce the oxalates, like I said, through soaking, cooking, blanching, boiling, fermentation. Pairing with lemon or citric acid breaks down the oxalates, and then pairing with a calcium-rich food, milk or cheese, to bind to the oxalates. And the medicinal plants, so golden seal, yarrow, comfrey, mullein, echinacea, St. John's wort, goldenrod, a lot of the evergreen conifers like cedar, juniper, pine, and spruce, you make teas out of them. But a lot of those plants are medicinal, and you really don't want to ingest large quantities of them. Utility plants that I think are really interesting, like cattails, you can use the fluff for fire making. You can also use it to shake the pollen out in a sack and make some bread out of. Like you can use it as a bread substitute or a flour substitute. The stalks for the cattails, when they're dried up, you can use them like a hand drill for fire making. I showed that in one of our videos. A video on cattail goes over a lot of these kind of utility uses for it. Bamboo for construction and building was really cool. I mean, there's so much you can do with bamboo. I've seen it where they're making fire out of it. They're making a vessel to boil water out of it. You can obviously use it for construction, for building a shelter. Willow is another one that's really good. It's got pain relieving properties in the bark. It has an aspirin type medicinal benefits. It's also really flexible and can be used to make bowed structures. You can make wreaths out of it and arches. Nettles can be broken down into cordage and paper, which is really cool. When I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you can make paper out of nettle pulp.
Either.
Pine resin, most people don't think about that. That's a really good glue.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Dave Canterbury videos I was watching, he was taking pine resin and boiling it down and concentrating it, and he was using that to glue arrowheads onto his little cattail shaft. He was using a cattail shaft for an arrow.
That's cool.
Yeah. There's so much you can do. It's really hard to choose what are my favorite plants, but I'd say go with the basic ones, like on our top 10 video. Those definitely have a lot of the most uses.
For sure. I think mine's yucca.
Yeah.
The fibers and things. A lot of natives would use it for sandals and baskets and all kinds of stuff. So I think that one's really cool.
Like about the Colorado Museum we went to?
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to this museum in Colorado Springs, and they were showing all the Pueblo Indians what they used to do with yucca. And it was amazing. They would break down the fibers and make little satchels and shoes and clothing and little slingshots and all sorts of stuff. Plus, with the yucca plant, you can use the stalk, and the root is shampoo. It's got saponins in it that you can lather up the root when you break it down a little bit and chop it up and use it to wash stuff with. So many cool uses with all these plants.
I think you've been showing that a lot too in a lot of the videos that you've done so far.
Yeah.
As the uses and all of that and the different histories of plants, and you give so much good information. And
that's what I'm trying to show, because most people, they just go over the wild edible video, or they got the wild edible there and they're just talking about it on camera. I was really trying to go in depth on the history and medicinal uses and utility uses. The videos are getting better and better each time. Like they say, you have to make. We listen to a lot of Roberto Blake and Think Media, like Facebook strategy, how to build your Facebook channel and make it grow and get better as a content creator. And they always say you have to make 100 videos and you'll get 1% better at each one. And if you can get 1% better, you'll be 100 times better. Mm-hmm. So we're just grinding away. We're at like 22 long form videos, and I think I've got 44 shorts. So hopefully we hit that 100 soon, but just using the editor, using Adobe Premiere and all of it. It's such a huge learning curve, but we're bound and determined to get better because this is our dream.
I know we have a bunch of projects hoping to be lined up, like a pocket guide and some other uses that we can do.
Yeah.
Like the recipes we're wanting to put on the channel too, and just kind of branch out a little bit. But what are your hopes and dreams for the channel? What do you hope to accomplish with it?
That's an awesome question. I would say that to help people of all ages learn the value of self-sufficiency and gain more respect for the miraculous miracle that Mother Nature is, I just want to help people not be afraid to go outside and identify these wild edibles and actually eat them, because there's so much free food out there that if I can just teach a few people, it would all be worth it. All these hours and hours that we've spent like researching and making the videos, and we look at the comments and there's a couple people that it really touched them and they really enjoyed the videos. You people know who you are, those specific people that comment and are constantly giving us encouragement. It keeps me going. Yeah. I'll feel all burnt out and I'm like, oh God, I don't know how much longer I can edit this video, and I'll read one of your guys' comments and it just re-inspires me and fills me with inspiration. I hope my editing and narrating style can make plant identification more accessible to everyday people and inspire them to become herbalists themselves and find a passion for plants and the outdoors. That's how YouTube is. I had watched a bunch of creators that really inspired me, and I was thinking maybe I could do this, because I was really insecure and self-conscious about trying to make videos and putting my voice out there. And eventually you just got to take the leap. This is kind of a hero, and like there's a lot of people like Frog in Progress. She's one of our subscribers, and she's got her own little channel, and she's trying to do the same thing, but she's like, one day I'll learn how to edit. And I'm like, yeah, just keep at it, just keep going and keep learning a little bit at a time. And if you just want to show people how to identify stuff, and it's all good. We're all a giant community trying to help each other learn. And it's like this big hive mind. So that's why I love this niche of wild edibles, because everybody is just so kind to each other and so helpful. And I want to make foraging fun and easy and simplify the process of plant identification and help people feel more comfortable and confident in their plant identification. So when they watch a video, a lot of them are like, oh my God, I never realized that plant was edible. It's in my backyard. And because I saw this video, it helped. And I finally realized that this was the plant. So like the way I make the videos, I want it to just get right to the point. I'm not, beating around the bush. We're going to get right into it. If you get an 8-minute video, it's going to be just jam-packed with information. It's kind of a faceless channel right now. I want to get more on camera eventually so they can get to know me better. But more it's about the plants. I think it's more about what I'm teaching. I want the plants to be the star of the show, so I just feature them mostly and try to get the best accurate representation visually of how to teach what I'm talking about. I love teaching these topics, and it helps me learn more by teaching it to others. That's why I love teaching you. You know, it always helps me learn more. The more I can talk about it with people, it just helps. I think it's you talking to me about it. We just constantly
asking questions.
Yeah. Be like, this is a really cool plant you taught me, you know, and we'll talk about more uses about it.
I really like that you just stay curious about it too. There's so much more to learn, even though you already do know so much and can teach and help other people identify. Like for me, it's really cool because you're just always curious. You're always trying to push yourself to learn new things to help better the channel. And
yeah,
because it's your passion and you want to be able to share that with people. And so I think that's really interesting to see all the hours that you put into it. When like people comment and say they love it, that makes your day.
Yeah.
That's really cool to see that your payoff, you know, how much you really just want people to learn and teach because you're really good at it.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Like you can never learn it all. That's why I think you got to be a constant student of nature because you'll never learn it all. So if you just keep an open mind and keep a student mentality, that's the best way to do. Like I'm watching other creators just as much as people are watching our channel. I'm constantly learning. There's so many better wild foragers and herbalists out there that I aspire to be like. Like if you guys haven't watched Foraging, I love his channel, his editing style. That guy knows his stuff. He's got all of the Latin binomial names memorized in his head. He doesn't even need a script. He just goes out there, just spouts off all this amazing information, and it's really interesting. And he's got like 120,000 subscribers. So there's certain channels I watch and like, oh my God, I need to up my game so I can be at that level. But yeah, and working so hard on a video for so long, you know, every 4 seconds I'm editing something, getting another picture, getting another video. And then you see the end product after you've worked on this thing for like 2 or 3 weeks. And it all comes out as one seamless piece of information that's going to help people. And it's all worth it. It's such like a delayed gratification. Such a delayed gratification. But that serotonin and dopamine you get when you finally get it done. And I'm like, oh my God, I can put this out to the world. People comment on it and help them so much. It makes it all worth it. Currently working on some wild edibles guides. Like we are designing a pocket guide. We've got a wild edibles calendar in the works that has 12 different wild edibles. And I tried to time those wild edibles for during that month they'll be in season. And we want to create flashcards, which would be really cool. We're thinking of like putting flashcards in a little key binder that are laminated that you can carry around when you're out hiking around. And we've got a bunch of ideas for little things that we're going to make to help you. And eventually the in-game goal would be to write an actual wild edibles plant identification book, which that's going to take a lot of research, a lot of time, a lot of photography. But that's the end goal, guys, is to release a book and be able to get it out to you. It's basically like a culmination of everything we're trying to do on a channel, but in a book. And also, if you guys haven't subscribed to us on TikTok and Pinterest, we're on those platforms as well. We're trying to get to 20K on TikTok.
We're close.
But yeah, go around and definitely like us on Pinterest and TikTok. And we're going to try to get on Facebook and everything else eventually to help you guys learn all the stuff that there is out there to learn. Because all we're trying to do is help you. All right. Well, we've walked around for about 30 minutes. Let's see how many miles we've gone. We've gone about 2 miles.
Ooh.
There's a lot. Yeah. So we're going to head back home covered in bugs and
hopefully, yeah.
And ticks.
Yeah, that heard me slapping.
But it was all worth it. This is our first podcast, so I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll get back to you with episode 2. All right. See you guys. This is Blake from Walk in the Wild, and if you are enjoying our channel and want to learn more about wild edibles, foraging, and herbalism, please like and subscribe, and we promise to keep those epic plant videos coming. Thank you so much for watching, and always keep your eyes open because you never know what you might find that's edible out in the wild.